Welcome, I'm Rabbi Phil Bressler of Beit Am in Corvallis, Oregon, and this is the daily summary video for the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi Daily Halacha Learning Project, covering the passage from Siman 80, Seif 77, to Siman 80, Seif 86. You can find links to the Hebrew and English text of this passage and to the calendar of upcoming passages in this video's description. This is our second to last day discussing the ins and outs of Melachot on Shabbat. Today we need to talk about making a tent. So as we noted a couple of days ago, the malacha of number 34, building, only applies directly to permanent structures. But rabbinic decree further prohibits making temporary structures lest you come to make something that ends up being permanent. So no tents. But what other things might qualify as making a tent? Kitzur has some examples for us. Spreading a sheet over a baby's crib, closing a box with an unattached lid, covering a right side up barrel with a board in order to make a table, closing the top of a chimney, covering an open barrel with cloth, and opening an umbrella. And of course, similarly to what we learned about knots, which is that untying a knot that would be prohibited to tie is prohibited, undoing any of these tents, as it were, on Shabbat is like demolishing a tent and is therefore prohibited. Some qualifications, though, on tent making and tent unmaking. If the quote-unquote tent is already partially made before Shabbat, you can complete it on Shabbat, because then you're only making an addition to something temporary, which is okay to do. Temporary on temporary, that's okay. Temporary addition on a permanent structure is not okay. The principle of Levod might come into play. A distance of less than 3 tefachim is considered closed or connected, effectively a solid wall. So a tefach is a hand breadth. That's this distance across the width of your hand. So about 8 centimeters is the standardized understanding of a tefach. So covering a space less than about 24 centimeters isn't considered making a tent at all. Covering or uncovering a space like a box or trunk also that has a hinged lid, that's not making a tent, that's just ordinary use. Let's talk about repairing things on Shabbat. Even though you're not necessarily creating something entirely new, just putting something back together again that already existed, fixing and repairing things is generally prohibited on Shabbat. And the concern is for number 34, building, because you're remaking a permanent structure of some kind, and also for number 38, striking the final hammer blow. The definition of repair really is to finish getting something ready in working order. Here's some examples. A vessel that's made of multiple pieces that have separated. If they're usually joined together loosely, you can put them back loosely. Like, I'm thinking maybe like a crudely constructed fence where it's just sort of things laid on top of each other. That you can put back. But if they're usually joined tightly together, like a well-made fence with pieces screwed together, for example, or with like woodworking joinery, you can't put that back together even loosely. Now note, the screwing isn't necessarily the issue, it's the construction aspect. So like a screw on top for something, like maybe a screw on top water bottle, that's okay to put on and take off because that's what it's designed to do. Another example of repair might be a stool whose leg breaks or falls out. You can't put it back on. And another one is that you might not think of is winding up a clock or a watch. Even though unwinding isn't breaking, that's what a watch that's wound up or a clock that's wound up, that's what the timepiece is designed to do. Winding it up, though, is still the last thing you do before you make it work. The exception here would be for a sick person who needs it, like to time taking their medicine, for example, but it's best to get a non-Jew to do it in that case. Another parallel example we'll talk about soon enough is tuning up a guitar or a violin. We'll talk more about musical instruments tomorrow. That's all for today. As always, our learning is dedicated to Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, the author of the Kitzur, and the historic Jewish community of Uzhhorod, Ukraine. See you tomorrow.